Hey,
Hey,
Chip.
Hey, that was awesome.
Where you
There
come
you go.
from?
A little something for the
Look
offering.
at
That was
that. I
fantastic.
appreciate that, man. Chip Scutari, everyone. Scutari C-Slack. Great PR firm. Way to go, man. How do you
Have
like
fun.
that? I didn't realize I had an audience sitting right here. Hey, welcome to the second episode of the Park Howell Show. And we are all talking here about story marketing, business of story, and what's happening in your world around story and how you can own it, own your market, delight your customers, engage with them, and get them to engage with your brand, and have some fun in the process. I just kind of hammered through my theme song, If You Only Had a Brain. I got to tell you where that came from. Number one, I love The Wizard of Oz, although I got to tell you the flying monkeys kind of freaked me out when I was a young man. But I was, one time before I did all of this, I was a creative director at a company called Quorum International. And I was kind of on the management team as a young man. I don't know, I was 27, 28, really got lucky to get into this position. And I was senior director of creative services. And we had a number of people in customer service on the phones and whatever. And I think they'd look at me kind of sideways sometimes, wondering how this young guy got in this nice job in management there. Well, one day I was in the creative department, just minding my own business, cruising around, working with our creative staff, and I was whistling, If I Only Had a Brain. And anyway, someone from customer service walks by, and they look in my office and they hear me whistling, and they kind of looked at me cross-eyed, and I kind of waved to them and carried on like that. And anyways, now the myth grew. All through customer service, they talked about this crazy creative director, and wouldn't you know it, one of the leaders is walking around whistling If I Only Had a Brain, and how apropos is that? So I heard about that for a week in the lunchroom, and everybody had a lot of fun at my expense. So I decided just to take it on as my theme song, If I Only Had a Brain. And by the way, I've got Hazel here. She's joining me for today's show too. Hey Hazel, you want to say hello to everybody? All right, you can go sit up there. Anyways, great to have you here. This is week 1 of 10 weeks where I'm going to be talking about the story cycle process. Now, for those of you that are new to the story cycle process, this is what it looks like. 10 steps. Now, this is a hybrid of Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, his 17 steps of the Hero's Journey. I boiled it down to 10 steps that we in the advertising, marketing, story marketing world can use to start really getting our brand story straight. And today, we're going to focus right here on the backstory. Right here. This is the beginning of everything. Now, what's cool about the story cycle process is once you start getting your story together and really understanding all of these different content buckets that makes your story unique and compelling and uniquely your own, that it becomes this expanding cycle. Every time you tell the story, you expand on it. Customer engagement expands, and I mean, it's really fun. It creates a story that you can literally live into and prosper from. So today, we're going to talk about the backstory. And why that is important is the backstory is literally your first step out of the primordial muck of commoditization. And what I mean by that, in the backstory, it is the foundation for your story. And what you have to do is answer this one all-important question. And that question is, what do you do better than anybody else? What do you do better than anybody else? Now, in branding academia, we would call this your position statement, your brand position statement. How is your brand positioned in the hearts and the minds of your customers so that they can compare you to your competition and really understand what it is you do through a very clarified brand story and your brand story position. Now, you see this a lot. One of the biggest things that I find when I'm teaching the story cycle process to folks is that they haven't identified, they haven't taken their flag, placed it in the ground and saying, this is what I do better than anybody else in the world. So for instance, for the business of story, my brand position is I help business leaders and communicators create epic growth for their organizations and their people through the story cycle process. through the story cycle process. This is uniquely my own program. It's proven itself out, and it's something that I own. It truly differentiates me from the other brand story strategists in the world. And I use this, not only for leadership development, brand story development, sales team development, and that's what I do. And I place that flag in the ground so people can kind of understand who I am in this big picture of the commoditization of people in the communications world. So that's what I want you to work through today. So I want you to think about, and even actually share right now, if you would, in comments here, what is it you do better than anybody else? Now, there's a 4-step way to get to this, and I learned about this many years ago, and I can't even remember what the book was I read that took me through these 4 steps, but I've used it ever since, and it's really, really powerful. So I want you to think about your brand story, what it is you do better than anybody else, and let's start, write this down, start at the 50,000 foot level. What industry are you in? Now, it could be, again, this is an industry that's going to capture a lot of different people. For instance, my industry is the communications industry, so that includes everyone from AT&T to Disney to large ad agencies to radio stations. Anybody in the communications world, I am in that industry, communications. So now I want to start boiling that down. What category do I service? Well, in my case, I service advertising and marketing industry. So now it's all of a sudden started to separate me away from the Disneys of the world's TV shows, telecommunications companies and so forth that are in the communications industry, but I'm in advertising and marketing category. So what's my specialty in advertising and marketing? Now, you imagine in the advertising and marketing world, there are lots of different folks. There's big ad agencies, there's small ad agencies, there's traditional firms, there's non-traditional firms, there's SEO companies, there's content marketing companies, there are consultants, and so I am competing for that mind share among everyone from that solopreneur consultant in the advertising and marketing business up to very large agencies. So I need to continue to fine-tune what my offering is. So in this case, my specialty truly is brand, story, strategy, development, and activation. I used to produce a ton of TV commercials and radio commercials and design websites and get into the production of all of that. Well, I have pivoted away from the production side of life, and now I am coaching, teaching, consulting, and speaking all on the merits of story marketing and how you can use story to really get your brand story straight and create that brand differentiator. So that's what I do. It separates me from all the other players out there. Yet that's not good enough, because there are still a lot of great brand consultants out there who, we share the same sort of specialty in there. Mine is about brand, story, strategy, creation, and story is key, and that's what leads to my #1 position in the marketplace, that the business of story is the #1 resource for business leaders and communicators to craft and tell compelling stories to grow their enterprises and their people through the power of the story cycle process. That is what identifies me from everybody else, and I own that. I'm a big believer that no one or few people are going to buy into your story until you own it first. So I want you in today's show to think about that. Answer that question. What do you do better than anybody else? And just work through that worksheet real quick. What industry are you in? What category? What specialty do you service in that category? And then what are you really unique at? What is your #1 specialty in that category? I had a friend, I was doing a workshop over at Seed Spot not too long ago, and we were working with Seed Spot is a terrific incubator here in Phoenix. They work with social cause companies that are really having an impact out there, but are in it. They're for-profit organizations for the most part. So I went in and did a 3-hour workshop with them just to help them really start understanding who they are and what they're about. And I want to introduce you to James. By the way, there is a blog post that will take you through this process that James was a part of this. And I think it's a really good example of really truly understanding what your #1 position is in the marketplace. Now, as they were going through this, James has a really cool after-school program for inner city and disadvantaged kids that keeps them off the streets educates them, engages them in all sorts of life lessons, and the whole goal is to help these kids go through college and graduate debt-free. Really an amazing program. And what's interesting about it is James uses that really kind of a subculture sport of squash. And now I say subculture not to upset you squash players out there, but it's not a racket sport that you come across all the time. And if you're unfamiliar with it, squash is kind of a cross between tennis and racquetball and handball, played inside in a court, and it has a very devout following of people. So it's a really cool sport. James has been playing it for a number of decades, and so it's near and dear to his heart. It's a passion of his, and he works with these kids using squash as a platform for these after-school programs to get them to college and whatever. Well, as we were going through this process with the group, and James was there, I asked James, I said, all right, James, what do you do better than anybody else? And James says, we have the best after-school program to engage inner-city and disadvantaged youth to help them get to college and graduate debt-free. And I had to tell James, sorry, man, you don't. I hate to say it, that's not a brand position. It's not fine-tuned enough. And the reason being is, do you realize that in Phoenix, Arizona alone, we have 1,500 after-school programs for inner-city disadvantaged youth. So, even though James's heart was in the right place, his brand was in no place because he just now settled in with everybody else. There wasn't a clear differentiation of what James does in the marketplace. So we worked with James, took him through the process, and we fine-tuned it. You see it now. He can own that first part that says, look, my after-school program is one of the top resources to engage inner-city and disadvantaged youth, to prepare them and get them graduated through college debt-free, and here's the kicker, through the power of squash. Now look, he's the only one out of 1,500 of those competitive programs that owns squash. That's his thing. That's his passion. That's what he's about. So I wanted James to put that flag in the ground and say, man, I own that. I am the after-school inner-city disadvantaged youth engagement program all about squash. Do you see now how that all of a sudden just kind of raises James up in your mind about the category of where he is, and there's a little bit more importance to it because your brain's going, all right, man, you stand out. That's bringing meaning to me. Now, here's the next thing. You got to ask yourself, what do you do better than anybody else? And then you ask, who cares? I mean, literally, who cares? And what I'm really asking for you there is to get straight with your number one audience. Who cares? So when I asked James, who cares about what you do? Who's your number one audience? And James said, everybody. And I said, I'm sorry, James, it's not everybody. Because if you are trying to appeal to everybody, then you're going to appeal to nobody. So James, I said, who are the people that really support your program? And he goes, well, the squash community. And I said, okay, let's go on. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Where does your funding come from? Well, squash players, they're the ones that write the checks because they love seeing our sport doing something really good and impacting youth in a very positive way. Plus, it's a way to promote the sport and recruit more players in for the longevity of the sport. So he said, really, those are the people that really care. And I said, that's your number one audience, at least from benefactors. So who's your number one audience as it relates to volunteers? He goes, well, the squash community, because they love to come out and work with the kids, share our sport with them, and help them progress, engage them through the after-school programs. I said, absolutely. And anybody else? And he goes, well, I guess the parents are, or the guardians, because they need to know what we're doing so that they make their kids available for us to work with, and they encourage the kids to go. And I go, absolutely. Within 10 minutes, we were able to get James to this real crystal clear focus on what it is he does, what it is he does better than anybody else in after-school programs for inner-city disadvantaged youth here in Phoenix, Arizona. Separated himself from the 1,500 other programs doing the exact same thing through his passion and his vehicle of the sport of squash, and then focuses his message on his number one audience, the people that are going to make him most successful, and that is the squash community. It totally makes sense. So that's just a little example of how to do it in your life. So I want you to go through, and I want you to share in the comment section here, what is it you do better than anybody else, and who in the heck cares about it? So that's the first step in the 10-step story cycle process. It's the backstory. It literally is your first step out of the primordial muck of commoditization. And you've heard me say it a lot before, we live in a land of abundance. There are abundance people like me in this world in brand story strategy. There are abundant people like James trying to help inner city kids. There are abundant people like you offering the exact same thing. So what is it you do better than anybody else? And I ask you to first look at your passion. What is your passion that drives you into your profession, into your professional pursuits? Jen Grisanti was on my podcast, the Business of Story podcast, about this time last year. And she did a marvelous job of talking about how to identify and follow your personal passions to drive your professional pursuits. And it's a really terrific way to find your position, what it is you do better than anybody else in the world. So this stuff really works, I'm telling you. I want to show you someone who I think is doing a really terrific job with story marketing. It's the Sock Club. It's the Sock Club. So I asked for a subscription to the Sock Club for Christmas, and my good son Parker Howell got me one. Thank you very much for that. So now every month I get this wonderful little package. It literally came in last night, so I thought I want to open it up and share it with you. What I love so much about Sock Club is they do a terrific job of packaging and telling and wrapping literally a story around something as commoditized as, you guess it, socks. So here is my Februari Sock Club that I just got today. It's a really, really fun little program. So let's talk about my socks here. Let's see what they had to tell me about the socks. Again, I think one of the great examples of story marketing, because they are elevating what this sock means to me. And you know, you're going to pay a little bit more for it. So, to Park from Parker, it says, have you ever been stopped by a roadblock? You have a goal or a dream and then bam, tough reality. Well, I guess we all have. That's why you want to get your brand story straight. Sorry, you aren't the right person for this. The goal is too far away. It can't be done. Yeah, we've all heard that. Well, we think about this a lot at Sock Club, and we always find inspiration in those who defied the odds. That's why we named this month's sock after someone who didn't listen to naysayers. Your Februari sock, the Amelia, that's right, this is your Amelia, with its winged-shaped repeating pattern is named for Amelia Earhart. After a grueling 15-hour flight through storms and mechanical failure, Amelia landed in Ireland. A surprised farmhand asked her if she had flown far. She calmly replied, from America. The journey may be long and tough, but when you're finished, people will be amazed by how far you have come. That's just one little way that Sock Club infuses tremendous meaning using story marketing into something as commoditized as socks. So do you see now how they have kind of, well, they own the story around socks. In this case, it tells you what inspired the design for this, and they elevate their brand in the hearts and minds of their customers simply by sharing a story. So that's just one really fun example of it. My Amelia socks, can't wait to put them on. I'll put them on tomorrow. Number two, Jim Peterson. This is a publisher who is over in California, and Jim attended my story workshop at Social Media Marketing World last year. And it's been great because he came up to me afterwards. He goes, you know, I'm a publisher, and I really didn't realize how important story is and how much more intentional we have to be in our story, not only for the advertising marketing of the book, their publication, but what they, the stories that they share within this beautiful, beautiful garden design magazine. Well, Jim has been great because he has stayed in touch with me ever since that workshop last year in April. And he's told me about how he's using story now in his direct mail campaigns, in his email marketing. He says his clicks are going through the roof, his conversions are going through the roof. He even now, for one of the first times, are having people responding back to him from his email marketing because the little anecdotes and the stories and the moments that he shares within it. Now, Jim bought this publication, I think a few years ago, and it was littered with advertising. And he decided that he was going to take all the advertising out of it and make this work on a subscription basis and really give the space back to the storytellers, his writers. And he said that the response has been phenomenal. In fact, now he says daily he's getting between 50 and 120 new paid subscriptions to Garden Design magazine because of his use of storytelling within the magazine, taking out all that disruptive advertising that just seemed to kind of piss his readers off, and use story marketing in how he promotes it and how he talks to his customers, both subscribers and others, to get involved in this. The power of story marketing. He's just another example of it. And if you're interested in learning more on how to do that and you happen to be in San Diego in March, I'll be there again. I'll be doing another 90-minute story marketing workshop on Wednesday, March 22nd at Social Media Marketing World. So go to Social Media Marketing World, sign up, or you can go through Business of Story and sign up as well. Love to have you in attendance. We had over 600 people there last year, and we're going to focus, my presentation has evolved even more into how to use story in your story marketing. Now, you know, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. If content is king, then storytelling is the kingdom's sorcerer. It's where the magic happens. It's where you truly bewitch your customers. I'm also looking at SEO, search engine optimization, and as important as that is, I'm gravitating more to story engagement optimization because, yeah, it's important to rank high, of course. It's important to cut through and be there at the top of the ranks, and that's why we all pepper keywords through our content so that we can rank and get there. But you know what? If we are not engaging in bewitching and entertaining and educating our readers or our viewers or our listeners through the power of story, then it's all for naught. Because when was the last time you were bored into buying anything? That's where story comes in. That's where story engagement optimization comes in. And that's what I'm all about here at the Park Howell Show every Friday, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I'm really glad to have you here. I'm going to be back next week. Where'd my story cycle go? Here we go. Next week, we are going to jump into the who cares portion. Oh, over here. The who cares portion, or what I say is, who's your hero? Spoiler alert, your brand is not the hero of the story. Your customer is. You want to know why do they care? Why do they care about what it is you offer? And how do you start connecting them in your story marketing? So, hey, thanks so much for being here. I'm glad to have shared my new socks with you, shared a little bit of the piano playing with you. I'm glad Chip came in and shared a couple bucks with me. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Super Bowl weekend. Don't know who you're rooting for, but I can tell you I'm pulling for the Falcons, by golly. Love their coach, love what they're doing, and come on, the Patriots have been there too many times, at least in my book. Bill Rozier will appreciate that. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Park Howell Show, come on back next Friday. We'll see you at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you very much.